The aim is just going to be going through like what makes it difficult to breathe wearing a mask, and what can you do about that, right? Because for some of us, mask wearing is pretty stressful. Some people feel very panicked or claustrophobic, or they're breathing really heavily. I'm sure a lot of us now have been in a situation, whether you're maybe like at the hairdresser or in a cafe, or you're around somebody, and you can tell they're really struggling, right? They're really panting in and out. They're finding the mask wearing, quite tough. And maybe you've had moments where it started to feel claustrophobic or difficult wearing the mask. And so I'm just going to go through like what are the problems that people are facing wearing masks, some of the science behind it, because I think it's really helpful to get some of the science behind it. And this stuff applies in general loads, actually, just to doing any breath work. It's really helpful to know some of the science. And then it's going to be like what not to do, what to do, and then any time for questions at the end. So hopefully we'll get through all of this by 8 o'clock. So, okay, the problem of wearing a mask. So what's the problem most people are facing, right? People have reported, all right, feeling panicked, or suffocated, or having anxiety, finding it very stressful. And I'm going to suggest that a lot of the issue comes down to one thing, and that is masks can create the feeling of not having enough air. Right, I think this is a primary driver of a lot of stress people are having wearing masks. Sure, maybe they might feel hot wearing them, or there might be some unpleasant sort of feeling, but I'm going to suggest that a huge driver is the stress that's created from feeling like not having enough air. So we're going to go through a little bit of breath science, because it's so useful to know, and it's going to give you the tools that you need to start to retrain some of your breathing to be more comfortable. So some of the breath science, I've got this image here, right, of somebody breathing, and I've got the image of someone breathing out, okay? So rather than have an image of the air going in, I've got an image of the air going out. And that's because a lot of what I'm going to be talking about is more about the science of breathing out than it is about the science of breathing in. It's, so, we've got another person. Here we go. Just let this person in. Just one moment, guys. Admit. All righty. So we're going to go through a lot of the science, and it's really helpful to know some of this stuff, partly as well just for self-coaching. Okay, so breathing out. We've got a small enough number here that you guys can call out. 5 points to the person who can tell me what gas do we breathe out when we're breathing out? Like, what's the thing the body's getting rid of?
CO2.
CO2, right? CO2. Okay. So the body's getting rid of CO2, and approximately, like in this next slide, okay, in the atmosphere, if you look in the top left here, the atmosphere is about 0.04% CO2. When you breathe out, you're breathing out about 5% CO2. Okay, so for those who've just joined, I'm just going through some of the science of breath. You kind of missed a little bit of the intro, but you're just joined just in time. Just going through some of the science of breath, because it helps so much for understanding about wearing a mask and how to make it easier. So it's really helpful to know a little bit of the breath science, and it's more the science of CO2 I'm interested in. And so when you breathe out, you're breathing about 5% CO2. So I'm gonna share with you the 3 roles of carbon dioxide, and please bear with me. This is really important to get your head around, and hopefully I'm going to make it quite easy for you to understand. So just a few little thought experiments. Maybe at school, maybe sometime as an adult, you have tried breathing in and out really fast and really hard, right? Some people deliberately do this. You just sort of, like a kid might try it out, or as a teenager, you try and do it, and you see what physiological effect it creates, right? And some of us have tried doing this, some haven't. But generally, if you breathe in and out really hard, but I'm going to stop screen sharing now, and I'm just going to present on my whiteboard. So if you breathe in and out really hard, right, you start to feel a whole load of symptoms quite quickly, okay? You might get dizzy-headed, you might get lightheaded, you might get a bit stressed, You might get cold hands and feet. You might get all these different symptoms come up. Does anyone know what's causing that? I know Sheila's going to know and Claire's going to know, and you know, because I've gone through this. But does anyone know what causes like that lightheadedness you get from breathing really heavily?
It's because you're not exchanging sufficient air, isn't it? Something to do with that, because you're not breathing fully in and out. So you've got something retained. Is it to do with that?
Right. So yeah. So there's all sorts of I'll share why in a moment. So it's not so much to do with gas exchange. We could be doing really deep breaths in and out. You don't have to be doing shallow ones.
Okay.
Even if you do really deep breaths in and out, you'll still end up getting lightheaded. I was talking to a guy yesterday. I did a session with somebody, and you know, he said something that a lot of people say is it too much oxygen to the brain? You know, is that why? But it's not to do with oxygen at all, really. Well, it is, but it's more to do with carbon dioxide. So if you start breathing out really heavily, the thing is that you start breathing out loads of CO2. Can you see the board okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So you start breathing out loads and loads of CO2. Loads are leaving the body, okay? And carbon dioxide, one thing it does is it dilates arteries in the body. And so by dilate, it opens up arteries. So if you've got like a high level of CO2, then the arteries in your body become more open and more dilated. If you've got a low level, they start constricting. And one place where it constricts is the blood flow to your brain. So if you start breathing really heavily, the reason why you get dizzy is because you're actually losing blood flow to the brain, right? That's why you can't think clearly. It's why you can't problem solve very well. And this is just one of the things that carbon dioxide does, okay? So I'll put number one, I'll put blood flow. Okay, so this is actually really important to know. So I'm going to move on, but we're going to keep this in the back of your mind that CO2 increases blood flow, okay? Another thing that carbon dioxide does is, and this is really strange. Like I just wouldn't have known this unless someone would have researched it and discovered it. But you have oxygen moving around your blood, and actually the oxygen in your blood doesn't get released automatically into the tissues and the organs of your body, right? The oxygen in your blood, it actually needs carbon dioxide to be released. There's something called the Bohr effect. And basically, the hemoglobin that holds onto the oxygen that's transporting it around the body, carbon dioxide is very like a negotiator. It sort of negotiates with the hemoglobin, and it says, hey, it's okay for you to let go of that oxygen, right? And then the hemoglobin releases the oxygen. And so a high carbon dioxide level is really helpful for breathing efficiently, right? Because if the carbon dioxide level is high, you get more oxygen out of the bloodstream. So the second thing it does is, I'll just put release O2. So carbon dioxide helps oxygen get released. Okay, and again, how does this relate to wearing a mask? We're going to get onto this, okay? But this is really important to put in the back of your head, into the back of your mind. So this third thing is the thing that's really the crux of the matter with wearing a mask. So why do people struggle with wearing a mask? They feel breathless, right? That they might feel a bit suffocated. They might start breathing really heavily. So, you know, we've all been swimming, okay? A lot of us have tried before to swim a length underwater, right? So just imagine there, like you're at the swimming pool, you push off and you're trying to swim underwater and you're going as far as you can underwater. And at some point, you have to put your head up out the water and take the big breath, right? What is it that has made you need to take that breath? What is it that's made you need to take that breath? Basically, what we all intuitively think is that I'm short of oxygen or I'm short of air, right? The reason why I had to take that breath is because I was short of air in that moment, okay? And don't get me wrong, you are using up oxygen, okay? when you're swimming underwater. But here's the thing, that feeling of the urge to breathe, that desire, that response to go and get a breath is not actually driven by oxygen running low. And this is such an important thing to get your head around, right? Oxygen getting low can give you an urge to breathe, but it has to get really, really, really low, right? Most of the time, most of your life, the urge to breathe is actually created by carbon dioxide building up. So when carbon dioxide builds up, it triggers in your body the feeling of needing to breathe more. So most of the time, your urge to breathe has got nothing to do with oxygen. You've got loads of oxygen in your body, right? The urge to breathe is being driven by CO2 building up, right? And this is the thing that's really relevant to mask wearing. This is really relevant to mask wearing. So our third one, I'll put it in blue because it's probably the most relevant one, right? Is the urge to breathe. Right, when CO2 builds up, we start feeling more, the body starts feeling more like it wants to heave in and out and you know, take bigger breaths, right? So does anyone have any questions on that? Is that kind of clear enough that those three things, or does anybody have like a, that doesn't make sense, or did anybody have a question on that before I move on?
No, it's fine, thank you.
Yeah, okay, all right. Fantastic. Okay. So let me just go back to sharing my screen again. All right, super. So that's our like 3 roles of carbon dioxide. So here's the really important point. This is a great mind shift to get your head around, which is if you are wearing a mask and feeling breathless, we're going to do some exercises really soon. But the really important thing, it's like a little mind shift that's important to make, is that you're not short of oxygen, right? And it's really important to kind of get your head around this so you can self-coach, right? You're not actually short of air, right? It's really helpful to be able to reassure yourself, like knowing some of the science behind it, to self-coach and go, okay, this isn't actually because there's a problem going on. Like I'm not short of air in any way. It's more just because CO2 is building up, right? That's what's driving that urge to breathe. So this is the strange opportunity of wearing a mask, okay? So if you can increase your tolerance of carbon dioxide, this is actually really healthy for you. Why is it really healthy? Well, because you get better blood flow and your body releases more oxygen. So if you can actually use, you know, the experience of wearing a mask to sort of start to retrain your breathing, you know, I'm going to suggest that this is really healthy because you can increase your tolerance to carbon dioxide. And there are a lot of benefits that you get. One of the reasons why I'm so passionate about this is because I have experienced so many benefits from doing some breath retraining. So we're going to do, oh, actually, before we move on, I'm going to quickly go through some functions of the nose. Again, this is really important for all the exercises that come next. And this is the last bit of science I'll be going through. So everything else after this will be practical exercises. So I put Nose Powered in the corner. I've got a Facebook group called Nose Powered. Feel free to join it. You know, it's going through essentially some breath science and highlighting just the benefits of nasal breathing. So really, like, everyone should be nasal breathing the whole time. There are, like, when you're sprinting, or there are like really extreme situations where you won't be able to do anything else except mouth breathe. But most of the time, vast majority of your life, you should just be breathing through your nose. Animals, no animal mouth breathes unless they're panting to get rid of heat, right? A cheetah running 60 miles per hour is nasal breathing. Horse galloping full speed is nasal breathing. You know, the nose, this bit at the front here is only 20% of your nose, okay? Most of your nose is if you touch the tongue against the top of the roof of your mouth. Behind, like above there, that's all your nose. Okay, so the nose is actually a really big organ and it has loads of functions. And I'll go through these really briefly. Again, this is really good to know. The nose humidifies, warms and cleans the air. It's good in these coronavirus times, actually, because you're less likely to take on pathogens or viruses, you know, if you're nasal breathing. The nose slows the air down by 50%, and this leads to the proper expansion of the lungs and increased oxygen absorption. So actually the breath moving in slower through the nose means that more oxygen can be absorbed. It triggers breathing in the lower lungs and diaphragm more easily. So if you mouth breathe, you're much more likely to breathe with the upper chest. And if you nasal breathe, you're much more likely to breathe with the lower chest, right? And just think about this, think about it in terms of gravity. Gravity is pulling all the blood in your body downwards. And so you actually have all the bloods in the bottom of your chest, or more of it is. So you get better oxygen absorption just because the air is going down lower, right? So if you can train yourself to breathe lower into the body, especially nasal breathing, this is really going to help you wearing a mask. Part of the issue is that we start to pant or we get stressed and we move to upper chest breathing, right? And actually this is more of a stressful way to breathe. The nose releases nitric oxide. It's a chemical that actually dilates your airways, increases oxygen absorption. So that the nose does loads of stuff that makes more oxygen available. So there's 10 to 20% more O2 absorbed with the nose. Sounds crazy. We think we'd get more air in with the mouth, but we don't. You get better oxygen uptake through the nose. So what that means is that feeling like I need to use my mouth is not about oxygen. You're getting more oxygen using your nose and breathing slowly, right? It's more about CO2 tolerance when someone's breathing heavily. Reduces the chance of chronic hyperventilation. I'll just mute. There we go. So it reduces the chance of hyperventilation, right? So as you can, if you breathe really heavily, get rid of the CO2, you get dizzy, you get stressed, all this kind of stuff. Finally, reduces water loss. So 40% more water is exhaled through the mouth than through the nose, right? You can test it out with your phone. You put the phone under your nose and breathe, you'll get like a little bit of water vapor. If you put your phone in front of your mouth and you breathe, you'll get a lot more water vapor coming out your mouth, right? And actually, I don't know why the government isn't going on about this. If the virus is being spread through through water, right? It's spread on water vapor. Why aren't they encouraging nasal breathing? You get less spread of the virus, right? Yeah. It's another addition to wearing a mask. It's just one of those ridiculous things. So every exercise we do is going to be, it's all going to be nose powered, every exercise that we do. Okay. So, all right. So exercise number 1, right? Super simple exercise. I may have done some of this. Some of you may have done this before with you, but we're going to do it slightly different if you have done it before with me. It's going to involve taking very small breath holds. Okay. And this is just a way of getting you a little bit comfortable with building up CO2, right? So if you're going to retrain anything, there's a massive difference between it just happening, as in like I'm wearing the mask and it's building up and I'm not really in control of it, versus you deliberately doing it. So if you can deliberately build up the CO2 yourself and recreate some of the feelings that you want to change, that's really helpful. So all we're going to do with this exercise is this. You're going to take a breath in and then a breath out through your nose. It's going to be a normal breath, a breath in and then a breath out. After the breath out, you're going to physically pinch your nose and you're going to wait for 5 seconds. Okay, so everyone, like you right now, to take a breath in through your nose and a breath out, and then pinch your nose, and then 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then resume normal breathing. And just resume normal breathing for a few breaths, 2 or 3 breaths. So that little breath hold just accumulated a tiny bit of CO2 in the system, right? So again, you're going to take a breath in through the nose and a breath out, and you're going to pinch your nose again, and you're just going to wait for 5 seconds. So just count 5 seconds in your mind, and then let go, and then just resume normal breathing. Okay, and I want you to do the whole thing with your nose. So, when you start breathing again, make sure you carry on breathing again through your nose. I'd like to do this one more time. Just take a breath in, a breath out through the nose, pinch your nose, and then wait for 5 seconds. and then resume normal breathing again. Excellent. And for some people, this may create some relaxation doing this, right? Just building up the level of CO2, it can create some relaxation in and of itself doing this. I actually often give this as an exercise to people who are very stressed or very anxious. Something you can do that can calm you down. But what I'd like you to do, I'd like you to carry on doing this exercise. I'd like you to see if you can extend the number of seconds. So I want you to breathe in, breathe out, and maybe do it for 8 seconds, right? Or maybe do it for 10 seconds. I'd like you to start to feel when the feeling of air hunger is arising. So you'll get like a feeling of an urge to breathe, but in a very controlled way. I want you just to maybe do 10 seconds and see if you can get the slight feeling of an urge to breathe to arise. And then just resume normal breathing again through your nose. It's going to be very mild. You're not going to push yourself. You're just going to wait until you get the first signs of an urge to breathe. Okay, and then it's going to breathe normally through your nose again. So try to do it all through your nose. Try not to use your mouth at all. So that sign of the urge to breathe, just notice where you felt it. Right? Some people might feel it more in their throat or more in their diaphragm or more in your face. You got it in your throat, Heather. Yeah, so you got more in your throat. Brilliant, brilliant. So we're going to carry on doing this, and I want you just to do this again. And again, just notice the sensations arise. And when they arise, just let go of your nose and just carry on breathing normally again. So it's going to be a breath in, a breath out, pinch your nose. Maybe you wait 10 seconds or 12 seconds. Notice where you feel the sensations and then carry on breathing through your nose again. And as you feel these feelings, I want you to realize that these feelings are not the feelings of being short of oxygen. I think that this is the thing in your head that you know, if you make this little mind shift around this, it's really helpful. That you're not short of oxygen at all. It's just a sensation of CO2 accumulating. Okay, so you can use this as an exercise. You know, you can keep repeating these mini breath holds, and every time you expose yourself to that air hunger and you're relaxed, you're retraining your relationship to that feeling, and you're getting your body used to a higher level of CO2. Okay, so you can just repeat this exercise. And I encourage you all just to continue repeating it right now for maybe another minute or so. So you're just going to take a breath in, a breath out, and then in your own time, in a controlled way, you're just going to pinch your nose, and you're just going to allow the feeling of air hunger to arise. Then you're going to let go again, and you're going to resume breathing through your nose. Okay. So this is actually a really, really healthy thing to do. If you repeat this, you'll notice you'll have a tendency to relax. And if I were you, I would try and suppress any sigh or yawn that comes up. Right? I'd try and suppress any sigh or yawn. I'd try and keep yourself just breathing lightly through the nose. So it's really interesting. The more you look into like the biochemistry of breathing, the more you realize that your body is used to a certain level of carbon dioxide. And if you raise it a little bit, which you just did in the exercise, your body might create the sense of it might sigh or it might yawn to try and breathe out the excess CO2 that you just built up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You just build it up a little bit and then your body will sigh, but you don't want to breathe it out. You actually want to maintain that high CO2 level in your body. So you want to kind of suppress the sigh a little bit and then just carry on doing the exercise. Okay, so if you practice this for 10 to 12 minutes a day, right, maybe 2 or 3 times a day for a number of days, you're going to start rebalancing your body's chemistry, and it's going to get easier and easier to breathe easily wearing a mask. It's like that. Go on, Heather. What?
I've got a slight feeling of congestion in the throat.
Right, that arises when you do the breath hold. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Right. Great. So I would really encourage you in a very controlled way. So you don't want to do it too strong where it gets stressful. You just want to do it a very light amount where it can arise and then you can be relaxed at the same time. And the more you kind of go into that zone of it arising, and then you stay relaxed, and then it passes, and then it arises, and you stay relaxed, and then it passes. That's just retraining your body to be comfortable with a little bit of higher carbon dioxide. So, and this is really healthy too, because very often in life, we get these sensations come up and we interpret them as a sign of, to feel anxious, right? We could interpret this sign as a feeling of danger or a feeling that, needs to be got rid of. But if you do this kind of exercise, it reconditions the feelings. And very often people can have a drop in anxiety or a drop in stress just through like the exposure to the sensation, because the sensation starts to become harmless. Okay, so that's one exercise that I think is a really easy one to practice. The second exercise that we're going to do right now is just going to be about doing slow, low breaths, right? Slow, low breaths. So low in terms of like, if possible, trying to breathe down into the diaphragm, trying to abdominal breathe. Okay, so I'd like you all to sit upright, if that's the position you're in. And the reason being is because if you have an upright posture, it can be easier to kind of feel the sensations lower down in the body as you breathe. And I'd like you all to put a hand on your chest and a hand on your stomach. Fantastic. And as you breathe in and out, I'd like you to focus just for a few seconds on the sensations you can notice with your hands. You can do this with your eyes open or closed. It's totally up to you. I want you to notice the sensations you can feel with your hands of your body expanding and then moving back in again as you breathe. I'd like you just to do that for a few moments. And I'd like you now to pay more attention to the lower hand. Pay more attention to the lower hand and the feelings around your stomach. See if you can get a sense of your stomach expanding as you breathe in and relaxing as you breathe out. And this is breathing lower into the body. If you can direct your attention lower as you breathe, you'll encourage the breath to move in lower. And what I'd like you to try and do now is as you exhale, just see if you can breathe slightly slower as you exhale. Like you see, just so you can slow down your breath ever so slightly as you exhale. Just slow down your breath ever so slightly as you exhale. And as you slow down your breath, you may at some point start to get a feeling of air hunger again, a bit like in the first exercise. You may not have it at the moment, but some of you may have a slight feeling of air hunger just from slowing down your breath. And again, if you do, this feeling is completely safe. You can just remind yourself, not actually short of air. This is just the feeling of carbon dioxide building up a little bit. And I'm just training my body to be more used to this higher level of carbon dioxide. If you're not currently feeling any sense of air hunger, what I'd like you to try and do is to see how quietly you can breathe. Continue breathing low into the body, but just see if you can breathe really quietly. So there's hardly any noise whatsoever from the air moving in and out through your nose. Again, if you maintain this for a little while with this very slow, quiet breathing, you may again get a mild feeling of air hunger start to arise. And again, I want you to remind yourself that this feeling is completely safe. This is just the feeling of carbon dioxide building up. And right now you're just training your body to be a little bit more tolerant of carbon dioxide. Okay, and so we'll pause there. We'll pause there. So did any of you in that exercise get some of the similar sensations like in the first exercise? Yeah, so Heather said yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, brilliant. So, pardon?
I didn't have the same sensation, but I needed to breathe in deeply after I'd slowed my expiration. So I needed to.
Yes, okay. Right,
That's
you
me
started.
taking too long.
Yes, great. So that's absolutely fine, right? So that'd be another sensation of air hunger, a slightly different one, right? Of that
Yes.
sensation of wanting to breathe in deeply, right? So again,
I did it. I couldn't stop it though. I did it.
Fine. No problem at all. So if if you really want to kind of get really comfortable, mask wearing, or just you want to alter your breathing patterns so that you're breathing slower and lower and more relaxed. When you do get that urge to breathe really, take a big breath, afterwards you can just do like a little mini breath hold, right? Because that big breath is your body is going, no, I don't like the CO2. I'm going to try and get rid of the CO2, right? And so afterwards you could do like a little 5-second pause after the big breath, and that'll just push your body back into that state where it's got this slightly higher level of CO2, right? So ideally you want to try and keep your body there for 10 to 12 minutes if you do one of these exercises, and that'll actually reset the receptors in your brain that monitor carbon dioxide, and you'll reset them and they'll go, oh, okay, well, this is no problem. I can have this higher level of carbon dioxide and it's no problem whatsoever. So yeah, like it's really interesting doing this stuff because you get to see all these physiological responses, and kind of what you're doing is like just altering them slightly, just nudging them in a certain direction. And again, this is great for things like anxiety, this exercise, because sometimes the anxiety that people can feel is not because of anything emotional. It's not because, not because of another person. It's not because necessarily there's a stress in their life. It's partly just because they're not used to the feeling of CO2. And this was a situation that I was stuck in, where actually to really relax, your breathing has to slow down. When you relax, your breathing tends to reduce by about 20%. And so the situation I was stuck in was I would start to relax, and then my breathing would speed up when I would relax. And when the breath speeds up, it puts me more into an active state of mind. And so you're able to actually relax more if you do some of these exercises. They can be useful for that too. They're nice kind of relaxation exercises if you get used to them. Does that all make sense? Okay for me to carry on? Is there any other questions?
No.
Okay, all right, super. So, okay, so here's what not to do, okay, when wearing a mask. And, some of this will mean kind of holding back on some sensations, but breathing through your mouth definitely is something you don't want to do whilst wearing a mask. Obviously, if you feel like you really have to, and it's a real struggle not to, then all right, that's where you are in that moment. You're going to breathe through your mouth, but ideally you want to put yourself in a direction where you're breathing through your nose, through the mask, okay? And again, if I go back to an earlier slide, actually, all the way back, like that's the issue you're up against. That's why mask wearing is stressful. All this talk about CO2 is because you're breathing out 5% CO2, and in the atmosphere, there's normally 0.04% CO2. So when you wear a mask, it's just accumulating behind the mask, right? So that's why you're getting the urge to take bigger breaths when you're wearing a mask. It's not your oxygen level is just fine, right? It's just because the mask is accumulating carbon dioxide. That's the main reason. So yeah, you wanna try to avoid breathing heavily. You want to avoid short, sharp breaths. One of the reasons why short, sharp breaths are particularly unhelpful is because you've got something in the lungs called dead space, and dead space is essentially all the space in the lungs where there's no transfer of air, right? So your trachea, like there's no oxygen going to get from your trachea into your bloodstream. Like the nose, no oxygen gets from the nose into the bloodstream. The only place oxygen gets into the bloodstream is in the lungs. So you've got all this, it's called dead space, is like space that gets filled with air and the air's not doing anything. It doesn't actually help you. So if you're taking short, sharp breaths, all you're doing is essentially filling the dead space and emptying it. And so short, sharp breaths don't actually help you get any oxygen in. You want to be taking slow, ideally low breaths, because you get more oxygen absorption low in the lungs. So slow, low breaths through the nose is ideally what you want to do. So what to do: breathe through the nose, breathe slowly and deeply, and self-coach, right? You know, this is, I'm going to say, this is the opportunity of mask wearing. You can use it to actually retrain your breathing in a useful way. If you see every time you go out wearing a mask as a bit of practice to like build your CO2 tolerance, then that's going to really change your mindset to it, and it can kind of help you with wearing a mask. If you're very sensitive to CO2, you could practice wearing a mask, right? You could practice wearing one, letting the air hunger build up, trying to relax with it. You can practice these breathing exercises we've gone through. You can also seek help. You know, I coach people with this kind of thing. So that's the main things to do. So, okay, if you want to learn any more, like we've got plenty of time to answer any questions, do any more exercises. But I've got a group on Facebook called Nose Powered. I share videos and I share information about breathing. Feel free to join that. We've got another group about psychology. That's my personal details right at the bottom. But does anyone have any questions on anything we've just done?
I was wondering how long it took you to get used to altering your breathing. Did you find that you had the urge to sigh or you felt uncomfortable, and how long did it take you to get adjusted to it?
Right, yeah, I'll happily share on that. So it took me, okay, so I'll before I say how long it took me, I'll say that I was someone that could not breathe through my nose. I was someone who was highly intolerant to CO2. I was someone who really struggled with my breathing. So I was starting, if there's a hill, right, and everyone's on a different place on the hill, I was like right at the bottom of the hill, right? So I had like all the hill to climb in order to get used to breathing differently. Literally, my nose was always congested. I was like constantly lacking energy, always out of breath, dizzy-headed all the time. I was really probably not in the place that a lot of people who I coach are starting out at. They're usually starting out somewhere ahead of me. So for example, there's a little test you can do where you breathe in and breathe out and you see how long it takes for the urge to breathe to arise. So in that exercise we did, wait 10 seconds, when does it arise? Most people who can benefit from breath through training, it might take like 15 seconds or so, right? For me, it was like 8 seconds or 7 seconds. Like so quickly, I would get the urge to breathe. So that's where I was starting from. Before I answer the question, I was starting from somewhere like right at the bottom of the hill. But I'd say it took me 2 to 3 to 4 weeks before but every week I noticed a significant improvement. So, and I did the exercises quite intensively. It's just the way I am. I just said, okay, I'm only going to breathe through my nose. I'm not going to breathe through my mouth anymore. And that was a complete shift. I was breathing through my mouth all the time. It felt like I was at high altitude. I had to walk. I couldn't really walk very far. I honestly, I had to rely on people around me because I was doing everything really slowly because it was such a struggle. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. I'd recommend probably taking it more easy, but that was just the way I went for it. But I'd say every week of doing these exercises, I noticed a significant improvement. It was like I had more energy, or I was more focused, or my breathing was calmer, I was more relaxed. Another week would go by, again, doing the exercises every single day. Well, another improvement. and also your nose opens up. So the nose gets more functional the more you use it. And CO2 not only dilates the arteries, it also dilates the airways. So some of you doing these exercises, your nose may have opened up a little bit doing some of the breath hold exercises or the light breathing exercises. You may have had some slight opening of the nose. And again, that's a product of CO2. So I'd say it took me a good 3 weeks. I'd say 2 to 3 weeks. But then I just continued going. So I pushed myself further, right? So I started running, just breathing through my nose. There's not just like the resolving an issue side of this. There can also be the fitness side of it. And actually, all the CO2 training stuff is exceptionally good for your health and your cardiovascular system. So like it sort of merged into that for me. So I still do CO2 training, but it's more like on the fitness side now. But I'd say 2 to 3 weeks. Every week you should see a benefit. But I really went for this for like 2 to 3 weeks, and then I slowed it down.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So a long answer, but it's good to contextualize it. Everyone's different. I've had some clients who they shifted to nasal breathing, and it's just made a massive difference. Like just nasal breathing at all times. You know, huge reductions in anxiety. Improvements in sleep, stuff like this. So another issue is if you're really, want to make a transition to nasal breathing, this is less about the masks, more about shifting to nasal breathing. There's an issue of breathing through your mouth or your nose at night as you sleep. And like me, my body just wanted to breathe through my mouth at night. So I've changed the way I sleep. I lie on my front. And I actually, this is going to sound a bit barbaric, but I actually put a little bit of tape on my lips to stop myself mouth breathing at night. And I also put a nasal strip on my nose to open my nose up. So I have no issues getting air in and out whilst I'm sleeping. So I even sort of went to those lengths. Yep.
So does that stop you snoring? Because
Yes.
I snore.
Yes.
Yeah.
So one way of thinking about snoring is, I mean, imagine you probably had this experience. You're drinking a drink and you've got a straw, right? And you suck really hard on the straw, right? And if you say you've got like a paper straw and it's getting like wet, what does the straw do? The straw closes if you suck too hard on it, right? The liquid moving through it closes the straw. Yeah. So if you're breathing very heavily, it's a similar thing. There's too much, your airways relax at night, the muscles relax. So there's less rigidity, or the airways not being held open as strongly. And so it's a bit like that straw when it's got wet, right? And you suck through the straw. There's such a quantity of air moving in and out that the airway starts to close. And so snoring is the sound. Well, one reason for snoring, there are more than one reason, but one reason for snoring is because there's too much airflow in and out. And so if you reduce your breathing, and also if you nasal breathe, your breathing will reduce anyway. You'll snore less, and you'll get better quality sleep. So when I changed to nasal breathing at night, I stopped getting. I used to get a lot of bad dreams, and I don't know, must be like, honestly, must be less than 5% of bad dreams of what I used to get, maybe 2% of what I used to get, right? A lot of the bad dreams I'd got was likely from over breathing and that creating stress. So the over breathing, we go back to this CO2 stuff, it will reduce the blood flow, not as much release of CO2, and it creates a stress response. And if you're stressed at night, you're going to have stressful thoughts. So what's that? It shows up as stressful dreams. So I think there's a lot of benefit you can get in your sleep from applying this stuff, as well as improving snoring and other things. Does anyone else have any other questions?
Can I just ask about swimming? I know somebody asked when we did our other thing, but I can't quite remember.
Yeah.
So I went back swimming the other week, and since we did that thing with you, I very much breathe through my mouth, and especially when I get into bed at night. So when I was swimming, I was trying to be really conscious of where I was breathing, and that was definitely through my mouth. And when I was doing backstroke, I was really practicing breathing through my nose, which was
Sure.
fine.
Yeah.
But whenever I'm doing like front crawl or breaststroke and my head is going under and I come
Yeah.
up for breath, I absolutely feel the need to get that in through my mouth.
Right.
Am I supposed to be able to do that through my nose? Because then there's like the water splashing up there and
Yeah. So Debbie is does a lot of swimming, right? She's open water swimming. So I think I think there is the attitude that swimming is a very hard thing to do this with, and likely I think the vast majority of swimmers mouth breathe. Likely backstroke you can nasal breathe. Susie on this call is someone that is training herself to nasal breathe while swimming. Do you want to share anything about that? You just have to unmute yourself. There you go.
Okay, hi, can you hear me now?
yeah.
Hiya. So I started on this nose breathing journey just a little bit after Alistair, and it's been a revelation for me. So first of all, it was pretty hard just to walk nose breathing, certainly walking uphill. So now I'm consciously nose breathing, and I've stopped snoring, and I've stopped having the level of sleep apnea that I was having, which was very unpleasant at times. So yeah, snoring doesn't happen now. I just do the simple exercises Alistair showed, and the things open up again. So I had an opportunity to swim about a month ago, first time, after kind of lockdown, stayed at a little hotel, and I was very, very into swimming prior to this. I used to teach swimming actually, but always been the conventional mouth breathing way. So when I got into this pool, having been training myself to breathe through my nose, it felt so wrong to open my mouth to breathe. But yet it was difficult. And it was a very short pool. I took it very slowly. And I thought, well, if it feels wrong to get air coming in through my mouth, and I understand all the science, and I love the explanation of dead space, by the way, that was brilliant, Alistair. So I thought, well, let's do it. I mean, it's a bit, I don't know if Al didn't explain this, when you first, your nose, there's muscle around there. And I used to find going up hills that my muscles in my nose would go flappy and weak just through the disuse, or just through the being unable to. And that would happen swimming. But I've just been patient with it. And I've swapped my strokes around. And I can say now that I can concentrate on my also with the increased tolerance of CO2, I'm breathing more efficiently. So my swimming is now, I'm going to convert to completely nasal breathing. Now I know James Nestor, who's the breath guy, I've just written the big book this year. I think he said to Patrick McKeown when he was talking, well, breathing and swimming, mouth breathing, you just have to. I disagree. Mm-hmm. And I would encourage you to be patient with yourself, just a bit like the walking, like the running, slow it right down.
Okay.
Alternate your strokes. It's very rewarding when you start to get there.
So yeah, really probably as possible.
Just try and be a bit slower.
I reckon you'll be in a very exclusive club if you train yourself to do it. I think, yeah. Go for it.
Yeah, no, I will.
Yeah.
I'm happy to chat with Sheila on like a one-to-one, Sheila, if you wanted to explore that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, swimming though is one of the sports which, even if you are mouth breathing, is very good for CO2 training and this kind of thing, because of the breath holding, and also because of the pressure that the water puts on your lungs. It's actually good for training your breathing muscles. So I think swimming is one of the few sports that's good for asthmatics, for example. A lot of asthmatics get exercise-induced asthma. And swimming, I believe, is an exercise that's often very good, even though they're mouth breathing. So yeah, swimming is good in general for this stuff. A lot of breath holding, obviously, whilst you're swimming. But go for it. If you want to explore it, then absolutely go for it. And you two connect.
To be able to do it.
Yeah.
It just feels like an absolute need to open my mouth when I come up for air. So even if I get that down a bit, that I'd be happy with that.
Yeah, right. but and part of the journey is like problem solving this stuff, and it's like getting really comfortable with that urge to breathe and getting relaxed about it. I mean, I remember as when I was doing a lot of the training in the first 2 or 3 weeks, 4 weeks, you know, I would just be amazed because like I was just breathing less. I could walk up and down the stairs and like I didn't have to breathe. Like and it just occurred to me like before I'd be like panting and you know, so it would be like this stress, but actually I can just, you know, I'm having a drink or I'm eating something, or you know, that urge to breathe just becomes like really insignificant. Yeah, it's like one less stress in your life that has to bother you. You know, like you get a lot more relaxed. So yeah, go for it. I'd love to hear how you get on. I'd absolutely love to hear how you get on if you pursue that.
I just say I think I feel more focused, much more focused now in nose breathing. With the other class I like to, which is body balance. Again, I would have just before this I would have been mouth breathing, but just breathing in and out the nose, I can feel I'm much more in touch. Feels more real. It's more of a kind of intense experience in a good way, not in a stressful way. It's very mindful.
The main thing exercise I push this stuff on is running, you know, jogging. I think sports like, you know, running and cycling are a lot easier to apply it to. I'd say as well. You know, if you explore that kind of stuff, there's that they're really useful things to do too. But you know, it's totally.
I think the nose splint is really helpful to begin with, as well. Sorry.
Yeah, for sure. I really recommend using a nasal strip. They've helped me loads with this transition. I think you may struggle with that swimming though, because I probably wash off.
Exactly, which is why I've stopped. But initially, for the cycling and the running or running, I would use that. But I thought, no, I just need the muscles to actually toughen up here now. So
yeah, awesome.
Don't use it now.
Yeah, really cool. All right, does anyone else have any questions? No. Okay, awesome. All right. Well, thanks for joining everybody, and I hope there was some value here. And yeah, like if you join the Facebook group and you want to share like anything you try out or anything, or have any questions, then please do. Please feel free to join. There's the bottom right of the screen, nose powered. That's the that's the group. So all right. Enjoy the rest of your evening, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
You.
And
Thank you, Alistair.
Interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. All right. Well, you know, hopefully see you all again. See you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you very much.